Most travelers come to Socotra, the isolated island suspended between the Arabian Sea and the Gulf of Aden, in search of its legendary dragon's blood trees. They photograph the bizarre umbrella-shaped canopies that look like giant alien spacecraft, marvel at the crimson resin that bleeds from their ancient trunks, and praise the island as one of Earth's last untouched paradises. But in doing so, they unknowingly overlook Socotra's most closely guarded secret and its most painful reality. Beyond the iconic landscapes, hidden behind the mist that drifts across the island's jagged limestone highlands, lies a far harsher world. Here, Socotri women quietly carry the weight of an entire civilization. They are the invisible architects of the mountains. In a society governed by centuries-old tribal traditions, their silent resilience is the only force standing between survival and complete isolation. Imagine an aerial view. A group of Western tourists, cameras in hand, eagerly pose beneath a 1,000-year-old dragon's blood tree. Only a few hundred meters away, concealed behind razor-sharp limestone ridges, a small figure dressed entirely in black struggles uphill with a 20-liter container of water strapped to her back. Barefoot, she walks confidently across jagged rocks without a single complaint or glance toward the visitors. These two worlds exist within the same landscape, yet they seem separated by centuries. The world celebrates Socotra as a biological treasure because millions of years of isolation allowed its unique plants and animals to evolve nowhere else on Earth. But for the women who spend their entire lives in the island's remote mountain villages, isolation is not nature's blessing, it is a life sentence of relentless labor. Every day, they navigate near vertical limestone cliffs where a single misstep can mean permanent injury or death. There are no hospitals nearby, no emergency rescue teams, no paved roads leading to safety. This reality completely overturns the romantic image that outsiders have of Socotra. Behind every breathtaking landscape lies an unforgiving struggle for survival, a struggle fought by people who never appear in travel brochures or Instagram posts. The invisible architects of the highlands. To understand the life of a Socotri mountain woman, we must abandon our assumptions about traditional gender roles. Here, women are the true backbone of the highland economy. They perform the most physically demanding work while living under the strictest social restrictions. Long before the first sunlight reaches the Dixon Plateau, the women are already awake. Their morning does not begin with a leisurely breakfast. Instead, it begins with another exhausting journey across knife-edged limestone paths, trails so dangerous that even adventure tour operators rarely dare to take visitors there. On their backs, they carry firewood, household supplies, and heavy containers of water. Years of carrying impossible loads bend their spines. The soles of their feet become thick and hardened, shaped by a lifetime of walking barefoot across razor-sharp stone. The greatest paradox is this. Despite carrying much of the community's physical labor and safeguarding the resources that keep their families alive, these women remain almost completely invisible. Tribal customs forbid women from speaking freely to outsiders, interacting with unfamiliar men, or even revealing their faces. Whenever tourists or strangers approach, Socotri women quietly disappear behind soapberry bushes or massive limestone boulders until the visitors have passed. They exist like ghosts in broad daylight, hearing everything, seeing everything, doing everything, yet remaining unseen and unheard by anyone beyond their own families. From sunrise until long after sunset, their work never ends. They herd goats across near vertical slopes, milk livestock, churn butter, weave coarse woolen rugs, collect water and firewood, prepare food, and raise children. Without their hands and their endurance, the economic and social structure of Socotra's mountain villages would collapse within days. Yet in the eyes of the outside world, and even within the power structure of their own tribal society, their voices carry almost no authority. They are the architects of survival on this extraordinary island, but everything they build is constructed in absolute silence. The weight of tribal law. Life in Socotra's mountain communities is governed by ancient tribal customs, unwritten laws passed down through countless generations. These traditions regulate nearly every aspect of a woman's life, shaping her behavior, her movements, and even her presence from the moment she is born. From early childhood, Socotri girls are taught that both their bodies and their voices are meant to remain hidden. When they reach adolescence, the traditional face veil becomes a permanent part of their lives. But this covering is far more than a religious or cultural symbol. It serves two very different purposes at the same time. On one hand, it protects them from the island's unforgiving environment, the scorching subtropical sun, powerful seasonal winds, and clouds of dust that sweep across the limestone mountains. On the other, it functions as an invisible social barrier, separating them from a modern world that is slowly drawing closer to Socotra's once isolated communities. Patriarchal authority in the island's highlands remains deeply rooted. Nearly every major decision in a woman's life, whom she marries, when she marries, and whether she is even allowed to leave her village to visit the coastal town of Hatabo, is ultimately made by the men in her family. This creates a complicated emotional reality. The tribal system offers women a powerful sense of communal security. No woman is ever expected to face hardship entirely alone. If she becomes widowed or encounters tragedy, the extended family and the tribe are traditionally bound by honor to provide protection and support. But that security comes at an extraordinary cost. In exchange for belonging, women surrender almost every form of personal autonomy. Their lives unfold inside an invisible cage woven from family honor and collective judgment. Even actions considered insignificant elsewhere, a conversation with an unfamiliar man or holding a stranger's gaze for too long, can be interpreted as bringing shame upon an entire family. Such perceived violations may result in severe punishment imposed by the tribal council of elders. For many Socotra women, the face veil carries a psychological weight far heavier than its fabric. It conceals not only their faces, but also their emotions, their ambitions, and the silent grief of lives whose paths were largely determined long before they were born. The desperate search for water and survival. By 2026, the challenges facing Socotra's women extend far beyond cultural restrictions. They are now on the front line of an increasingly harsh environmental crisis. Climate change is transforming this isolated island with alarming speed. Rainfall, once scarce but relatively predictable, has become increasingly erratic. Springs that sustained mountain villages for generations have dried up, leaving behind nothing more than cracked mud and exposed stone. Under the island's traditional division of labor, securing fresh water has always been considered a woman's responsibility. Today, what once required 1 or 2 hours can consume half an entire day. Before sunrise, while the mountains remain cloaked in darkness, women begin climbing steep and treacherous trails in search of underground springs or small pools of rainwater trapped deep inside narrow limestone ravines. Every journey is a calculated risk. Slippery rocks, sheer cliffs, and the crushing weight of heavy water containers place relentless strain on bodies already worn down by years of labor. Water is only part of the burden. Socotra women are also responsible for managing their family's livestock, especially goats. On Socotra, goats are far more than domestic animals. They represent a family's financial security and often its only safeguard against prolonged drought. Their milk, butter, and meat provide essential nutrition and income. As grazing land continues to shrink and water becomes increasingly scarce, women must lead their herds farther from home, climbing higher into the mountains in search of the last patches of dry vegetation. Month after month, year after year, this relentless physical exhaustion leaves unmistakable marks on their faces. Many young women appear decades older than their actual age. Perhaps the greatest tragedy is that these sacrifices unfold in places where even the most basic infrastructure remains absent. For many mountain communities on Socotra, piped water, electricity, and paved roads are still distant dreams. Medical care is virtually non-existent. When a woman goes into labor, she often gives birth inside a simple stone shelter, assisted only by traditional birth attendants with no formal medical training. Complications that would be treatable elsewhere can quickly become fatal. Over the years, countless mothers and newborns have lost their lives on these isolated limestone mountainsides, beneath the towering dragon's blood trees that have become symbols of Socotra itself. While the world admires those ancient trees as natural wonders, the quiet tragedies unfolding beneath their branches remain almost entirely invisible. Modernity at the edge of the mountains, a psychological battle between two worlds. But by 2026, Socotra is no longer completely isolated from the rest of humanity. The gradual arrival of satellite internet, even though connections remain slow, expensive, and unreliable, has begun to create the first cracks in the centuries-old walls of tribal tradition. In a handful of valleys closer to the island's center, Wi-Fi signals now reach aging smartphones carried by younger villagers, bringing vivid images of the outside world into places that had remained virtually untouched for generations. This quiet technological shift is triggering a profound psychological transformation, especially among Socotra girls. For the first time in history, many of them can see women living beyond their island. Through a small phone screen, they watch women attend universities, choose their own clothes, drive cars, build careers, laugh openly, and make decisions about their own futures. A completely different world suddenly exists before their eyes. The contrast is almost unbearable. On one side of the screen lies a life filled with opportunity and personal freedom. On the other lies the reality they wake up to every morning 4-hour journeys to collect water, endless physical labor, and marriages arranged according to customs that have governed the island for generations. This growing awareness is quietly fueling a conflict between generations. The tribal elders and older men remain determined to preserve traditional values, viewing Western culture and modern technology as direct threats to the island's social order and family honor. Meanwhile, many young people are beginning to imagine lives beyond those boundaries. Young women now find themselves suspended between two worlds. They have seen the possibilities of the future. They know that freedom exists, yet their lives remain bound by customs that have shaped Socotra for centuries. Leaving is rarely a realistic option. In communities where tribal identity defines survival itself, abandoning one's family or rejecting tribal authority can mean complete social exile. A woman who leaves risks losing not only her relatives, but also the only support network she has ever known. Outside the island's traditional society, many possess neither financial resources nor the education and practical skills needed to build an independent life. For many of them, modernity does not immediately bring liberation. Instead, it brings something far more painful. It awakens the realization that another life is possible while offering no safe path toward reaching it. That awareness becomes its own quiet form of suffering, unfolding in silence among the mist-covered cliffs of Socotra. The resilience of a hidden heritage. Yet it would be a profound mistake to see Socotra women only as victims of hardship. Despite living under immense physical demands and social restrictions, they possess extraordinary resilience and an unwavering determination to preserve their cultural identity. That strength is most visible during the rare moments when they gather away from the presence of men. At secluded mountain springs hidden deep inside narrow canyons, or within simple stone houses while the men are away herding livestock, the atmosphere changes completely. Here, face veils are lifted, smiles appear, laughter replaces silence. Within these women-only spaces, they sing traditional songs in the ancient Socotra language, a language found nowhere else on Earth. Through those songs, they pass down the history of their tribes, recount legends of the island's ancient mountain spirits, share generations of herbal knowledge, and speak openly about love, loss, hope, and dreams that can rarely be expressed elsewhere. These gatherings are far more than moments of companionship. They form an invisible network of emotional support that has sustained generations of women living in one of the world's most isolated landscapes. Within these songs lives the memory of their ancestors. Within these conversations survives the soul of Socotra itself. They provide the strength needed to shoulder another heavy container of water the next morning, to endure another difficult season, and to preserve a culture that continues to resist the passage of time. One cannot help but ask, how much inner strength does it take to carry the survival of an entire household across unforgiving mountains while remaining almost invisible to the thousands of international visitors who come each year searching for Socotra's natural wonders? The women of Socotra do not ask the world for sympathy. What they deserve is something far more meaningful: understanding, respect, and recognition for the extraordinary role they quietly play in preserving one of humanity's most remarkable living cultures. From trees to people. As the last rays of sunlight fade behind the ancient dragon's blood trees, their umbrella-shaped crowns cast enormous shadows across Socotra's crimson evening sky. Slowly, the island returns to the silence that has defined it for centuries. Tourists pack away their tents and cameras, carrying home breathtaking photographs of what many describe as an alien island, unlike anywhere else on Earth. But high in the mountains, the day is far from over for the women of Socotra. They are still gathering the last pieces of dry firewood, lighting evening fires, preparing a simple meal for their families, and quietly readying themselves for another exhausting journey before dawn. The daily search for water that begins all over again with the first light of morning. Perhaps it is time for the outside world to look at Socotra differently. For too long, the island has been celebrated almost exclusively for its extraordinary trees, its turquoise coastline, and its spectacular landscapes. Yet admiration for its natural beauty has often overshadowed the people whose labor makes life there possible. The world's attention needs to shift from remarkable plants to remarkable people. From picture-perfect postcards to the difficult realities faced by the women who live among these mountains every single day. They are the island's true guardians. Like the deep roots of the dragon's blood trees that penetrate barren limestone in search of the smallest traces of groundwater. These women quietly sustain Socotra through resilience, endurance, and unwavering determination. Without them, the mountain communities that have survived here for generations simply could not endure. And perhaps the greatest mystery of Socotra has never been its strange trees or its otherworldly landscapes. Perhaps its greatest wonder has always been hidden in plain sight, within the extraordinary courage, quiet strength, and remarkable resilience of the women whose stories are rarely told. The next time someone speaks about Socotra, perhaps the conversation should begin not with its legendary trees, but with the invisible women who have protected this island, its people, and its traditions for generations. Because in the end, it is not nature alone that makes Socotra extraordinary. It is the people who continue to keep it alive.